Okay, so now we're moving into chapter 16 where we're going to talk about the endocrine system. The endocrine system is one of our two major control systems that we have in our body. The other major control system that we have in our body is the nervous system, and you cover that in a lot of detail at the end of AMP1. I just kind of want to give you an overview of how these lectures are going to work for this chapter. We're going to have the typical section by section video for the first 5 sections of chapter 16. But the second half of chapter 16, so sections 6 through 11, really just want you to focus on this overview video that I posted directly below this in Canvas. Why? Because your textbook goes into way more details regarding the hormones and the glands than you're going to be responsible for on the exam. So the summary video is not based off of PowerPoints, but is kind of a general overview of the glands and the hormones that they secrete, the function of these hormones, and a couple other details regarding the hormones and glands that I would expect you to know. But it's basically covering all of the important information and the information that you'll be tested on. There's a PDF copy of everything that I write out in that video posted below that, so you don't even have to take any notes, or you might have to just take a couple of notes. You can just print out or study that PDF when we're talking about glands and hormones. Also, under the supplemental material, there's hormone flashcards. If you want to print those out, basically they're set up by glands, the hormones, a bunch of functions, and if you cut those out and try to match those up with the glands, sometimes that's helpful, especially if you're trying to learn all of these various hormones and glands. Some of them you may have touched on in AMP1, or even we've talked a little bit about in AMP2, like erythropoietin or EPO. Okay, so moving on, let's talk more about the endocrine system. It is, like I mentioned, one of the body's major control systems, just like the nervous system, but it is a little bit different from the nervous system by the way that we control certain aspects of our body and how quickly or slowly we have the effect of the control itself. If we're talking about the endocrine system, what we're really talking about is altering metabolic activity by the using hormones. And hormones are really just a type of chemical messenger, and these chemical messengers are going to be secreted by cells into the extracellular fluid. And then they can travel through the blood and go on to have a variety of different functions, for example, like metabolic functions. Some of them will go on and bind to receptors on cells that cause some sort of response that's delayed. So after a couple, even a lag period of a couple seconds to a lag period of several days. So various, as far as response period, can vary depending on the hormone and the target organ itself. In general, when we're talking about the effect of hormones, the responses tend to last a lot longer than those of the nervous system. So nervous system had really short duration responses. If you remember the events at the neuromuscular junction, when you were talking about skeletal muscle in AMP1, there was an enzyme in the synaptic cleft called acetylcholine esterase already there, ready to go in and degrade acetylcholine almost immediately as soon as it binds to its receptor. So very short-lived because there's typically enzymes there to degrade them readily. If we're talking about the endocrine system, it's going to travel in our blood, so it has long duration as far as responses, and then it's going to have to reach our liver, our kidneys to actually be broken down. We're not relying on enzymes that are present in that specific site to go and degrade them. Again, if we're talking about nervous system, we're talking about neurotransmitter release. Endocrine system is hormone release. The nervous system, another difference is where they can act. So if we're talking about the synapse of a neuron to of an effector organ, it's very specific, and it's going to be determined based off of where that axon is actually synapsing. If we're talking about the endocrine system, because we're talking about the release and diffusion of hormones into our bloodstream, they can act virtually anywhere our blood goes, so virtually anywhere in our body. So Because our nervous system is synapsing very specifically with its effector organ, those neurotransmitters only act over that very short difference where they have to cross over that synaptic cleft, and that's basically it. If we're talking about the endocrine system, because the hormones have access to our blood, they can act over long distances. So in general, when we're talking about hormones, basically hormones can target most cells in our body. So hormones have very widespread and diverse effects. So things that they can control can include reproduction, growth and development, maintenance of electrolyte, water, and nutrient balance of blood, especially the hormones acting at the kidneys, regulation of cellular metabolism, our energy balance, and even mobilization of our body's defenses. This is just kind of a review from AMP1, just what is the difference between an exocrine gland and an endocrine gland. Well, basically, where are they secreting their substance? So an exocrine gland was something like your sudoriferous glands or sebaceous glands, which you talked about in AMP1, where they're actually excreting whatever substance they're holding out onto the surface. If we're talking about an endocrine gland, they lose their duct in their developmental process, and they're going to be producing hormones and releasing those into the extracellular fluid, which eventually reaches the bloodstream. Unlike most organ systems, the endocrine organs are not grouped together, but they're actually widely scattered throughout our entire body. So just an overview, when we're talking about endocrine glands, that's going to be our pituitary gland, which you probably studied its location in AMP1, along with the thyroid, parathyroid, adrenal, and pineal glands. The hypothalamus is what's referred to as a neuroendocrine gland because it has neural functions, but it also produces and releases hormones. So it's a neuro and endocrine organ, so neuroendocrine organ. Some of these glands have both exocrine and endocrine functions. So things like our pancreas, gonads, and placenta, portions of these organs do contain some endocrine tissue, so they are able to release hormones. Okay, chemical messengers, just in general, we have a couple different types. We have hormones, autocrines, and paracrines. If we're talking about hormones, those are those long distance chemical signals that can travel either in the blood or the lymph, virtually anywhere in our body. We also have autocrines. Autocrines are short distance chemical signals, and they exert their effects on the exact same cell that secretes them. So it releases it, and then they come back in and affect the same cell. We also have paracrines. So these are locally acting chemicals that affect cells other than those that secrete them. Again, we're talking about locally acting, so over a short distance, but just not the same cell that it was secreted by. The autocrines and paracrines are examples of, again, local chemical messengers, and most physiologists don't consider the autocrines and paracrines part of the endocrine system, because when we're talking about the endocrine system, we're talking about chemical signals acting over a long distance, and the autocrines and the paracrines only act over a short